podcast της Athens Voice.
Hi everyone, it is our podcast, Sundays in the World. It is a podcast with international news regarding issues that we have read, that we want actually to discuss further, and issues that I think that we have to pay special attention. Our topic today, it is Metaverse, challenges for communication, democracy and citizens. This podcast, it is brought to you by Athens Voice and from me, Nikos Panagiotou and Christos Fragonikopoulos, while our today's guest, whom we would like to thank, is David Timis. David is the Global Communication Manager of Generation, the largest global employment program by annual volume that both trains and places people into life-changing careers that would otherwise be inaccessible. His mission in life is to prepare people for the future of work, while his interests lie at the intersection of education, policy and technology. David was educated in business and management at the University of Glasgow and the European Political and Governance Studies at the College of Europe. He has 8 years of work experience in marketing, communications and public affairs in organizations such as the United Nations, L'Oréal and Google. Based on his experience, and also that he has been a keynote speaker for TEDx, Google and the European Commission, we have invited David and we would like to thank him for accepting our invitation. David?
Thank you very much for having me, and yes, I look forward to having an exciting conversation about technology and its implications.
So, the first question, David, we have heard about Metaverse. Can you describe what Metaverse means and will mean in practice, and what way it might change our lives?
So I'm not going to speak about the philosophical concept behind the Metaverse, because I was just watching yesterday a really interesting documentary on Netflix about, and by the way, I'm just making a small parenthesis. So in this documentary, a small company from Germany in the 90s called TerraVision managed to create something which many people say, including the founders, was the precursor of Google Earth, but they were already envisioning it in the 90s as something that, you would be able to zoom out in your city, let's say, by using Google Earth now, and even be able to zoom in a house or a shop and buy things. So they were already envisioning something similar to the Metaverse in the 90s in Germany. What now Facebook is trying to do is partially to leverage technologies that are now actually available to create the Metaverse, but partially is also a rebranding exercise, which is to do with all the bad publicity they got recently, and all the policymakers putting a lot of pressure on them to change their business model. So partially is leveraging existing technologies to create this AR, VR powered world, and partially is a rebranding exercise coming at the time in which Facebook has been really hit harder than ever, I would say. I think I even saw a cover with Mark Zuckerberg on the Time magazine, which had a delete sign on it. So especially in the US, there's a lot of backlash towards Facebook. So yeah, these are maybe the two reasons why they thought of creating the platform, from what I gather and from what I've read in the press as well.
What extent do you think, David, that Metaverse, it is something that can be applied? Because there's a lot of discussion going on whether or not this is something feasible in the near future.
I mean, again, this is something for those of you who are familiar with video games, for instance, and I cannot say I'm a gamer anymore. I used to be in high school a long time ago, but even back then there was a game called Second Life, which was literally what Facebook is describing now. You were able to choose an avatar, and then within the game you were able, I think, to even make in-app purchases. So what Mark Zuckerberg is now envisioning is basically things that were already either created earlier or at some stage piloted, and now because of the technology, which is finally powerful enough to do it maybe at more exponential level, he's doing this metaverse thing. Because also, I think I didn't add this dimension initially, so it was partly an exercise of how to use existing technology to create this metaverse. It was partly because of the rebranding exercise, but it was also partly a business decision, because, as you know, Google has been through a very similar path with Alphabet. So Google was at the time in which it was really hard for the founders to really, and for the CEO back then, to really say which one is Google actually, because they're already investing in life sciences, they're already investing in so many connected but still very different worlds than it is, ads and Google search. So they created this umbrella called Alphabet. Facebook is also doing something similar, because now beyond social media, they also have this digital reality labs, their Oculus. So they have this VR dimension, which is maybe a bit more disconnected to their let's say common business. However, many critics say that in Facebook's case, the problem is a bit bigger, because Facebook is still a social media company. So by just changing the name into Metaverse, it's not like with Google, that Google had way more brands under its umbrella, which are way more different. Facebook still has Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook, which are all social media networks. The portion of their a portfolio of organizations that is non-social media related is still very small and unknown. So just to put this out there was this third reason why Facebook thought of creating a metaverse, to use it as an umbrella for their portfolio of companies. How successful it will be, as I said, I have my doubts in the future.
Christos, in our previous podcast, you have raised the concerns and the issue of metaverse as a challenge for citizens, and especially on how they use social media.
The main question is, why do we need all this in our lives? How is it going to contribute, to the improvement of our lives,
So Christos is actually raising the point of now with Metaverse and the challenge that it creates. Why is it probably a time where we should have actually to reconsider to what extent we actually need these types of, let's say, developments or applications or social media? David, your response?
I don't think the metaverse is a solution out of the current reality, even though more and more we do see that video games, because they're becoming more immersive, and metaverse, because as Mark Zuckerberg described it, will be very immersive. It's an escapism, a way of escaping reality and the problems we have in the real world, which I think it's dangerous, because many people will probably find refuge in something like this, especially in another pandemic or another lockdown in which the current reality is not exciting enough. The metaverse will probably provide such an escape. So I think it's an interesting thing to discuss about. At this stage, we can only discuss about it philosophically, because obviously we don't have any comparison of a similar metaverse created, at least not to the depth of this sort of VR AR capability. Because, as I said, the example I gave earlier with Second Life, it was still just a video game. You were not using VR to be immersed in it. You were not looking at the screen. You were able to see real life next to you. Now the way metaverse will work will probably be with the Oculus, with the glasses, which means you will be completely disconnected from reality. Somebody can come and hit you on the back of your head and you will not know if it's in the game or if it's in real life. So the disconnection is probably going to be much stronger, at least the way it's described by Mark Zuckerberg. And I also worry that some people, if not a bigger portion of people, will find refuge there and would prefer the metaverse over reality.
I think that one of the challenges that Christos raises, and also what you talked actually, David, it is about metaverse having a totally different impact on how individuals use Facebook and actually all other platforms. The request actually and the challenge to have another life, as you mentioned, the second life through metaverse, it will challenge a lot even current users. And one of these current users, it is how we actually understand social addiction. What are the implications of having an avatar living a parallel life in this universe? What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I think there was even a movie about this, if I remember. I mean, again, science fiction is good at predicting some of these inventions or technology-powered creations. and I forgot now the name of the movie, but it was exactly this. There were people who were spending half of their daily waking time in this other reality in which they were rulers of the world because they were really well performing in the game, whilst in the real life they were barely making ends meet and barely being a good contributor to society. So indeed, the situation as described by Professor Christos is very real, and I also think the tech companies should play a different role, and that yes, this offering us escapism is not the way. What Facebook was initially intended to do, connecting people, is something that I think could still work. But as you all know, it's built now as a ads machine to make money out of us and out of our data. So it's no longer just the pure purpose of helping us connect with family and friends. It's already beyond this, and it's a business now. So they're trying to keep us as much as possible on their platforms, which means it's no longer about connecting, it's also about making money.
Yes, this is the problem.
Yes, but Metaverse actually constitutes a development in the communication field as well. It actually shows the changes that will take place in our life, even not only in a symbolic level, but in a real level. COVID-19 speed up these technological developments, and this is what I want to ask you, David. To what extent it will alter our interaction with social media and in general the impact that communication will have on us?
So creation like Metaverse, you mean, how would it impact this new way? I mean,
yes.
Now I'm just speaking based on the promises made in the announcement led by Mark Zuckerberg. The promise is that it will enable us to have a much stronger connection with the people we speak with and we connect with. And at this stage, I can imagine it's going to be more interactive, because that's the power of AR. It literally allows you to interact with your physical space as it would be almost in front of you. So indeed, I think it could be a much more immersive experience, an experience we will be connecting better with peers and environments than we currently do. But as I said, there's the risk of preferring these experiences over the real life experience, especially when it comes to maybe again playing a video game or using the metaverse to doing shopping. It's probably going to be much more comfortable and safe to do it in this metaverse than actually going to a mall and risking meeting new people in real life, because this will, especially now with the way the world is, and Harari has been describing this already quite a lot, the famous Israeli historian, we're expecting other pandemics in the future. We're expecting other regulations, maybe that to wear masks or to keep social distancing. So in a sense, what's happening now in today's world is very worrying, because it almost encourages us to stay home and live in the metaverse as opposed to going out, interacting with people, shaking hands and doing all the things that we used to do. And especially in countries like the ones that we come from, Greece and Romania, it was very common to be really physical and open with people. Now it's almost like our governments are encouraging us, yes, for good reasons indeed, to do differently. But these small actions that we do now differently, this is new habits, new behaviors, which we will then, again, if the metaverse will be properly launched in a couple of years and another pandemic, God forbid, hits us, many of us could be just lost in that space and prefer it over the real life. And when lockdown measures are lifted, we will still prefer the metaverse because it's safe. So it's really interesting. I don't want to describe a dystopian world, but now that you asked me this question, I am describing it, I just realized. And there is a risk of this happening, of us becoming less connected with each other, actually, even though the purpose of Facebook is to connect.
You would not really like Facebook, as I understand, to go on, or any other company to go on with similar projects, yes?
I mean, as I said, it's very early to tell, because the way Facebook describes it now, it's still pretty vague. There's actually a lot said in the press that actually Facebook doesn't have the capability yet of doing all these things, and it might still take a bit of time. And I cannot be a critic or a promoter until I actually see exactly what the metaverse will entail. But indeed, my assumptions that I made earlier are based on the sort of fears that I have, based on what the promises were made and based on what I see happening in the real world. So connecting the promises that Mark Zuckerberg made of creating this metaverse in which we can enjoy a different sort of life, and the fact that life in real world is again, going through difficult times with the pandemic and with conflicts in different parts of the world, I almost see it as a perfect mix for people who will prefer this reality, which is being created for them. And this is a real danger, which I'm not sure how much Facebook is thinking about now, because what I did read in one of the publications that I've read recently to understand better what the metaverse is, this was actually published by the Harvard Business Review, and I'm going to quote the ending of the article, which I found fascinating. It said, with its rebranding effort, Facebook is making promises that it doesn't seem to able to deliver right now. So until it shows that it's making real changes, Meta will just be the same old Facebook by another name. So indeed, based on the habits that Facebook displayed with regards to ethical issues, with regards to the Cambridge Analytica scandal, I am worried that this is the company who's presumably going to create this metaverse, a company who, for good or the bad, already proved itself that it's maybe not so reliable, and also proved that it doesn't always have the interest of its users first, but the interests of its, companies who are paying for the ads and so on and so forth. So it's a bit scary to see this is being developed by Facebook, to be honest.
Thank you, David, for being with us today. It was the podcast All Sundays of the World, a podcast offered from Athens Voice and curators me, Nikos Panayotou, and Christos Franco-Nikolopoulos. And we had today the pleasure to have with us David Timis. David, thank you very much. Looking forward to have you again.
Thank you for having me. A pleasure.
Ήταν ένα podcast από την Athens Voice. Μπορείτε να ακούσετε τα podcast της Athens Voice στο athensvoice.gr και στο Spotify, στο Apple Podcast και το Google Play Music.